You think you can just walk in here and disrespect the badge? I am asking you one last time, where were you last night?
Rain hammered the cracked asphalt outside the gas station as Elijah Brooks stepped out of his pickup, the metallic tang of gasoline thick in the air. He wore his old army hoodie, faded, mud-stained, and proud. The American flag patch still clung to the sleeve. He just wanted coffee. Nothing else. Blue lights ignited behind him. Hands where I can see 'em. A voice barked. Sharp, commanding. The kind of tone Elijah hadn't heard since Afghanistan, but this time it came from home. A white officer stepped out, badge glinting under the fluorescent glare, hand already resting on his holster. Elijah froze. "Officer, is there a problem?" "You match a description," the cop said, scanning him top to bottom. Black male, hoodie, nervous. "That ring any bells?" Elijah's jaw locked. The rain soaked his clothes, blurred the lines between soldier and suspect. "I serve this country," he said, voice level. The officer smirked. "Then you should know how to follow orders, soldier." The word landed like a slap. Around them, cameras lifted, customers whispering, recording, pretending not to. Elijah slowly reached for his wallet. The officer's shout cut through the storm. "Don't move." A gun clicked, a child screamed. And for a split second, Elijah saw a reflection of himself in the wet glass of the station door. Not the veteran who'd saved men under fire, but the man this cop already decided he was. Then, the officer leaned in close, rain dripping from his brim, and hissed, "You think that uniform makes you strong? You're still weak." Sirens wailed in the distance. Elijah's hands trembled, but not from fear. Something inside him snapped. The story begins before the trigger's echo fades. Rain stitched thin silver lines across the cracked concrete, each drop marking time with merciless precision. Elijah Brooks stood still, palms raised, breath steady, like he was back in a war zone. But there were no enemy combatants here, just a man with a badge. "Step away from the vehicle," Sergeant Cole ordered. His voice carried authority sharpened by arrogance. "Now," Elijah obeyed, the movement slow, deliberate. "Officer, I didn't do anything wrong." Cole's eyes narrowed. "You fit the description. Tall, black, hoodie, nervous energy." "I'm a veteran," Elijah replied. "Came home 6 years ago. My license is in the—" Cole stepped closer, rain rolling off his cap brim. "Don't reach. Keep those hands right where I can see them." A small crowd began to form beneath the station awning. Someone whispered, "He's just getting gas." Another voice, "Start recording." Phones lifted like mirrors, reflecting injustice from every angle. Cole glanced around, jaw tightening. "Turn those damn phones off," he barked. No one moved. Elijah's heart pounded. He could smell the officer's cologne, chemical, overpowering. Every sense screamed caution. "Sir," he said quietly, "I served under fire. I'm not your threat." Cole scoffed. "You think service makes you special? You people always pull that card." That line cut through Elijah's composure. For a moment he saw the desert again, the heat, the chaos, the brotherhood. He'd bled for a flag this man wore on his chest like a costume. The officer circled him, then grabbed his arm. Hard. "You're obstructing," Cole said. "You can explain at the station." Elijah winced. "You're making a mistake." Cole leaned close. "The only mistake here is you thinking you matter." Gas station lights flickered. Someone shouted, "He didn't do anything." Another recorded angle caught the moment Elijah was shoved against the hood, cuffs clamping cold against his wrists. "Stop resisting," Cole yelled, though Elijah had gone completely still. "I'm not resisting," Elijah said, voice trembling, not from fear but from fury. "You're humiliating yourself." Cole's lips curled. "Say that again." Elijah met his gaze. "You heard me." A tense beat hung between them. Cole shoved him harder, pressing metal into bone. Rain pooled around their feet, blurring reflection and reality. Then, silence. Only sirens in the distance, growing louder. Get him in the car, Cole muttered to a rookie officer. Elijah didn't struggle. He'd learned long ago that dignity sometimes meant stillness. As the cruiser door shut, he looked out the window, catching the faces of strangers, angry, afraid, helpless. In their eyes, he wasn't a man anymore. He was a moment, a symbol, a warning. The door slammed. Thunder rolled, and for the first time, since the war, Elijah Brooks realized he was back in enemy territory. The fluorescent lights hummed like insects. Cold, unblinking, clinical. The precinct smelled of bleach and stale coffee, like something that had been cleaned too often to hide what really lived there. Elijah sat cuffed to a steel chair in a small gray room. Water dripped from his sleeves onto the floor, slow and rhythmic like a clock. He stared at the stains in the corner of the ceiling. He'd seen cleaner tents in Kandahar. Sergeant Cole leaned against the wall, arms folded. "You like making scenes, huh?" His smirk was faint, practiced. "Got the whole station talking. The soldier who cried racism." Elijah said nothing. Cole paced in front of him. "You're not special, Brooks. I don't care how many medals you got. You think being in the Army means you get to mouth off to me?" Elijah's jaw tightened. "You pointed a gun at me while I was buying coffee." Cole leaned forward. "And you looked like trouble." A young officer, Morales, entered quietly, a clipboard in hand. He hesitated near the doorway, not meeting Elijah's eyes. "Sergeant, booking's full. You want me to start the report?" Cole waved a hand. "Yeah, write him up for resisting." Morales blinked. "Sir, I didn't see—" Cole's glare snapped him silent. "You didn't see anything because I'm telling you what happened. Understand?" Morales nodded, voice low. "Yes, sir." Elijah's voice was calm but laced with steel. "That's how it works, right? One man lies, another signs." Cole turned, smiling thinly. "You got a problem with authority, soldier?" Elijah met his eyes. "Only when it hides behind fear." The silence after that line felt heavy. Even Morales stopped writing. Cole's expression shifted. Anger, then calculation. "You keep that attitude up, and you'll spend the night in holding. Maybe longer." Elijah said, "Do what you have to do." Cole left the room without another word. The door shut, leaving Morales alone with Elijah. For a long moment, neither spoke. Morales finally muttered, "For what it's worth, I'm sorry." Elijah looked up. "You're not the one who needs to be." Morales swallowed, uncomfortable. "You shouldn't have been brought in like this. I saw the footage. You didn't resist." Elijah's stare was steady. "Then why write the report?" Morales's pen trembled slightly in his hand. "Because I've got a kid at home. Because if I don't, Cole writes me up. Transfers me to night patrol in the projects. You know how that goes." "I do." Elijah's tone softened a fraction. "You've seen wrong, and you'll let it stand. That's how it grows." Morales didn't reply. The only sound was the distant echo of phones ringing somewhere down the hall. When Cole returned, he tossed a paper across the table. "Sign this, Brooks. Statement of conduct." Elijah skimmed. The form, loaded with false language, aggressive, non-compliant, threatening posture. "I'm not signing lies," he said. Cole's smirk faded. "Then I'll file it as refusal to cooperate. You'll sit until Monday." "Fine," Elijah said. Cole stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You want to know what I see when I look at you? Another angry black man who thinks he deserves the world's pity. Weak. Always the victim." The word weak landed heavier than the cuffs. Elijah's pulse thudded in his temples, but his expression didn't change. He'd faced worse words under enemy fire. Cole leaned even closer. "You're nothing without that uniform. Out here, you're just another statistic." Elijah met his stare and whispered, "Then write me down." Cole slammed the table, stormed out, and left the room vibrating with tension. Morales stayed behind, staring at the closed door, then back at Elijah. "You're not weak," he said under his breath. Elijah didn't answer. He looked down at his wrists, raw from metal. Hours passed. Shift changes echoed through the hallway. Voices came and went. Eventually, Morales returned with a set of keys. "You're being released. Someone called in a favor. Guess that footage is already making noise." Elijah stood. "So it begins." Morales looked uneasy. "Cole's not happy. He's talking about suing the department if they don't back him." Elijah's voice was quiet, resolved. "Truth doesn't need backup." Morales unlocked the cuffs. "For what it's worth," he said again, "you deserved better." Elijah nodded once. "So does everyone." When he stepped out into the night, the rain had stopped. The air was sharp with the smell of asphalt and freedom, bitter, temporary, fragile. Headlights streaked across wet pavement as he walked toward the street, every step heavy with exhaustion. Behind him, the precinct loomed like a fortress built. To contain more than men, it held silence, fear, complicity. Elijah didn't look back, but Morales did, watching through the glass as the veteran disappeared into the dark. And for the first time in years, the young officer felt the weight of the badge, not as protection, but as shame. By morning, the video had burned through the internet like dry brush. 20 seconds of grainy footage, Sergeant Cole shouting, "Stop resisting," while Elijah stood still, replayed on every screen, every feed, every news loop. Justice for Elijah trended before sunrise. Elijah watched it all unfold from the worn couch in his apartment, still in yesterday's clothes. The local news anchor's voice bled through the flickering light. "Authorities state the incident is under internal review. The officer involved, Sergeant Daniel Cole, has served the department for 15 years. A pause. Then, veteran Elijah Brooks declined to comment. He muted the screen. He couldn't bear the sound of his own name becoming a headline. His phone buzzed relentlessly. Unknown numbers, reporters, old comrades, people offering sympathy he hadn't asked for. He let them all go to voicemail. Then one message cut through. Ava Sinclair, civil rights attorney, calm, precise voice. "Mr. Brooks, I've seen the footage. If you're ready, I can help. This isn't just about you. Call me." He stared at the phone for a long time before setting it down. Outside, the neighborhood was alive. Cameras, microphones, onlookers pretending to pass by. A news van idled across the street. A woman shouted, "We're with you, Elijah." He closed the blinds. The knock came 10 minutes later. Sharp, authoritative. He opened the door halfway. Cole stood there. Civilian clothes. Sunglasses hiding his eyes. "You think this is over?" Cole said quietly. "You humiliated me. You and your little camera friends." Elijah's voice was low. "You humiliated yourself." Cole's jaw tightened. "You don't understand how this game works. They'll turn on you the minute it's profitable." Elijah stepped closer. "I didn't ask for any of this." Cole smirked. "Doesn't matter. You're the symbol now. Congratulations." The angry vet. He turned to leave, but Elijah called after him. "You called me weak. You still believe that?" Cole didn't answer. He walked off, the sound of his boots heavy on the wet concrete. Inside, Elijah finally sat again, staring at the muted television. On screen, Cole's official statement rolled. "The situation was unfortunate. I acted in accordance with my training. There is a coordinated attack on law enforcement morale, and I won't be silenced." Then his photo, clean, pressed, haloed by the station's emblem. Elijah's chest tightened. He turned the TV off, but the noise of it all wouldn't leave his mind. Anchors debating his tone, online pundits analyzing his body language, strangers demanding statements, apologies, boycotts. He poured coffee, hands trembling. The smell brought him back to that gas station, the rain, the neon, the gun. Another knock. Softer this time. He hesitated, then opened the door again. Ava Sinclair stood there, early 30s, sharp suit, steady gaze. "You didn't call," she said. "I didn't plan to," Elijah replied. "Then why'd you open the door?" He didn't answer. She stepped past him, surveying the cluttered apartment, the muted TV. "You're being dissected," she said. "Every outlet wants a quote, a tearful soundbite. Don't give it to them. Give them facts. I don't want fame." "You didn't choose it," she said, "but you can choose what it does to you." He studied her. You think there's justice for this? There's exposure, Ava said. Sometimes that's the start. He looked away. Exposure doesn't heal. No, she said quietly. But it makes silence impossible. He sat, rubbing his wrists. What happens now? Ava's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. Public pressure's building. The mayor's office is calling for transparency. Internal Affairs has to respond. That's leverage, if you're willing. Elijah's gaze hardened. If I speak, it won't be for leverage. It'll be for truth, she nodded. Then we'll do it your way. Outside, another reporter's voice carried faintly from the street. A decorated veteran at the center of a growing national debate. Ava looked out the window. They'll twist your story every way they can. Don't give them what they expect. Elijah's voice was low but certain. They expect anger. They'll get clarity. She turned to him. You ready for that? He met her eyes. I've been ready since the desert. For the first time since the arrest, Ava smiled slightly. Not relief, but recognition. Then let's start. As she gathered her files, the noise outside grew. Sirens, chants, the sound of something larger waking up. Elijah stood by the window watching a city that suddenly knew his name. His reflection stared back at him. Tired, scarred, unbowed. For the first time, he didn't look like a victim. He looked like evidence. The desert had its own kind of silence. Not the kind born of peace, but the kind that followed after explosions. The pause where life decided who stayed. Elijah remembered that silence now, sitting alone in his apartment. The news looping footage of him in handcuffs. The rhythm of the words, aggressive, resistant, suspect, blended into the memory of mortar shells. He closed his eyes and the desert came back. Afghanistan, 6 years earlier. The sun was a merciless coin hung in a white sky. Dust whipped through the air like shrapnel. Private First Class Elijah Brooks crouched behind a rusted truck frame, shouting over the crack of gunfire. Where's the evac? 2 clicks north. They won't make it. Then we move. He ran, adrenaline roaring through him, body obeying instinct over fear. Ahead, a Humvee smoldered, a man screaming inside. Elijah lunged forward, dragging him free as flames licked at his sleeve. The soldier's name patch read Cole. Stay with me. Elijah yelled, slinging him over his shoulder. Go! Leave me! Cole gasped, blood soaking the sand. Not an option. Rounds cracked the dirt at his feet, but Elijah didn't stop. He carried the man through fire and dust until they both collapsed behind the perimeter wall. Later, in the medic tent, the same Cole gripped Elijah's hand weakly. You saved my life, man, he whispered. You're a damn hero. Elijah nodded once, exhausted. We look out for each other. Cole's cousin, Sergeant Daniel Cole, the same voice, the same name. Back in the present, Elijah stared at the faded commendation on his shelf. He'd forgotten the name until Ava's words from earlier replayed in his head. We'll dig. Background, connections, everything. Now the pieces clicked. The man who'd called him weak. The same bloodline as the man whose life he'd saved. The irony struck hard, leaving an ache deeper than anger. Ava arrived that afternoon, files in hand, hair pulled back tight. She found Elijah still at the table, the citation unfolded before him. You okay? She asked. He handed her the document. Read the name. She did. Sergeant Thomas Cole. She looked up. Any relation? Cousin, Elijah said flatly. Different war, same arrogance. Ava sat, absorbing it. You realize what that means? It means I saved his family's name before he dragged mine through the mud. Ava's tone hardened. Then the story writes itself. Elijah's voice dropped. No, stories don't fix truth. People do. She studied him. You're not angry enough. I was, he said. Now I'm clear. A silence hung between them, the kind that demanded choice. Ava opened her folder. Internal Affairs just released a statement. They're not suspending him yet. Said there's insufficient evidence of misconduct. Elijah's laugh was sharp, humorless. Insufficient evidence. There's a video. There's always a video, Ava replied. They'll wait for it to fade. He looked toward the window, the streetlight haloing the blinds. Then we don't fade, Ava nodded. We use his past. We show the public who he really is. That connection, your act of service, his betrayal, it matters. Elijah thought of the man in the desert, burned, terrified, grateful. He thought of the man in the rain, sneering, confident, cruel. 2 generations of Cole, 2 reflections of the same disease. He spoke quietly, almost to himself. War doesn't change men. It shows them. Ava closed the folder. Then let's show them all. Outside, the city moved like it always did. Traffic, noise, indifference. But inside that dim apartment, something shifted. Not vengeance, not outrage. Clarity. Elijah picked up the old army hoodie from his chair, running a hand over the frayed flag patch. The fabric was torn, but the emblem still held. He looked at Ava. "When this is done," he said, "I don't want parades. I just want peace." Ava met his gaze. "Then we aim higher." "Peace through exposure," Elijah nodded once. "Then let's begin." The camera light on her laptop blinked red. Recording. For the first time, Elijah told the story of the war, and the man he saved who never knew what his name would one day mean. And somewhere across town, Sergeant Cole opened his inbox to find the past staring back. The morning the department issued its official review, the city pretended it cared. Press conferences bloomed like weeds, carefully scripted apologies, clipped statements about community relations and ongoing investigation. Behind every word, Elijah could hear what they meant. We're waiting for this to blow over. Ava's office smelled of paper and stale coffee. She sat across from Elijah, her laptop open to a dozen browser tabs. Screens played the same speech from different angles. The police chief flanked by Cole, both in uniform, both stone-faced. "Sergeant Cole has our full confidence pending review," the chief said. "We ask the public to remain patient as we pursue due process." Ava paused the video. Translation: "They're circling wagons." Elijah leaned back, arms crossed. "They always do." She studied him. "You've seen this before, haven't you? In the field. Different battlefield, same excuses." A knock at the office door interrupted them. Morales entered. No uniform, just plain clothes and hesitation. He looked smaller out of the badge. "I shouldn't be here," he said quietly. Ava gestured to the chair. "You already are?" Morales sat, eyes darting between them. "Cole's untouchable. The department's spinning it. They're saying your aggressive stance justified the stop." Elijah exhaled slowly. "Aggressive stance. That's new." Morales rubbed his temples. "They'll bury it under jargon. I've seen it happen. They file enough reports, people stop caring." Ava leaned forward. "Not if we make them care." Morales looked up. "You don't get it. Internal affairs isn't independent. They're part of the same machine." Elijah's tone was measured. "Machines break." Morales's eyes flicked toward him, respect mixing with fear. "Cole's got people above him protecting him. He's done this before. One guy and a kid and I filed a complaint last year. It disappeared." Ava's pen froze mid-note. "You can prove that?" Morales hesitated. "Not yet. But I know where to look." Ava nodded. "Then look quietly, we'll cover the noise." Elijah turned toward the window. Outside, reporters still waited for a statement. He watched their cameras flash, hungry for spectacle. He said, "The country's not watching for justice. They're watching for a headline." Ava closed her laptop. "Then we write the one they can't ignore." That evening, Cole sat in front of a different set of cameras. The police union's media event streamed live, every network tuned in. His voice was calm, rehearsed. "This attack on my character is an attack on law enforcement itself. I've risked my life for the city. Now I'm being targeted for doing my job." The audience applauded. "We live in a time," Cole continued, "where every second of police work is dissected by people who've never worn the badge. I won't apologize for keeping my community safe." Ava muted the feed. "He's weaponizing victimhood." Elijah didn't respond. He just watched the man's face, confident, untouchable, and felt the same coldness he'd felt in that interrogation room. She said softly, "He's building a shield before we strike." Elijah's jaw tightened. "Then we strike harder." 2 days later, Morales called from an unlisted number. "I found it," he whispered. "The kid's complaint, filed last year." Cole roughed him up during a stop, falsified the report. The family took a settlement and signed an NDA. Ava's voice sharpened. "Can you get me the document?" "I already did. You'll want to see it." Within the hour, the file appeared in her inbox, scanned, grainy, but real. The language was identical to Elijah's report. Non-compliant, aggressive, threat. Ava printed it and slid it across to Elijah. "Pattern," she said. "This changes everything." Elijah read it in silence, then folded the paper carefully. No, it just confirms what we already knew. Ava leaned forward. You could win this case, he met her eyes. I'm not chasing a win. I'm chasing a reckoning. That night, the local news aired a leaked clip. The first 20 seconds of Cole's earlier altercation with the teen from the hidden file. The video had found its way online. Morales's work. The footage was short, brutal, undeniable. By dawn, the same police department that had defended Cole announced he'd be placed on temporary leave. Ava's phone rang nonstop. Elijah's too. But he ignored the noise. He stood by the window as the city stirred, early light spilling over rooftops. He whispered, one truth down. 100 more to go. Ava looked up from her screen. You know this isn't over, Elijah nodded. It's not supposed to be. Behind the headlines and outrage, the machine had started to tremble. And for the first time, the system wasn't sure it could contain what it had built. The air in Elijah's apartment was heavy, still suffocating. Every surface seemed coated with a thin layer of tension. Unopened mail, cooling coffee, the hum of his phone vibrating endlessly on the table. Each vibration carried a new demand. Interviews, statements, documentaries, podcasts. He ignored them all. Across the room, the television blared. Cole's attorney now speaking for him. Sergeant Cole is a decorated officer unfairly targeted by politically motivated activists, the lawyer said. My client acted within his training. This so-called hero is exploiting his veteran status for sympathy. Elijah turned the screen off. The silence that followed was louder. He rubbed his temples. The past week had stripped him bare, not just publicly but financially. The diner where he worked nights had temporarily suspended him due to distraction concerns. His landlord had posted a notice, rent overdue. He had money in savings. Not much, enough for one more month, maybe two. But that wasn't what hurt. It was the way people looked at him now. Not with hostility, but with pity. The veteran turned headline. The door knocked. Once. Then again. Harder. When he opened it, Officer Morales stood there, rain dripping from his jacket, eyes bloodshot. Can I come in? Elijah nodded. Morales stepped inside, glancing around the dim apartment. You've been quiet, Morales said. Too quiet. Noise doesn't equal progress, Morales sighed. You saw the press conference? Every word. They're throwing everything at you, background checks, neighbors, service record. They're desperate to find a crack. Elijah's tone was dry. They'll find a man who did his job, went home, and got stopped for buying coffee. Morales looked down. You don't deserve this. Elijah studied him. Neither do you. But you're still part of it. The words hit hard. Morales didn't answer. Elijah continued, voice steady. You helped me, and I respect that. But helping from the shadows isn't the same as standing in the light. Morales's shoulders sagged. You don't understand what it costs. I do, Elijah said. You think I didn't lose things for standing up once before? Men died for doing what was right. Morales sat, head in his hands. You make it sound simple. It isn't. That's why it matters. For a long moment, the only sound was the rain against the window. Then Morales said quietly, Cole's talking lawsuit. Claims defamation, says he's the victim of a smear campaign. Elijah gave a humorless laugh. He's a professional victim. He wears it better than his badge. Morales looked up, defeated. I can't keep this quiet much longer. IA's questioning everyone. They know someone leaked the file. Elijah turned away. Then tell the truth. You don't get it. The truth ruins people. Then it's overdue. Morales stood, pacing. I've got a family. Mortgage. If they find out it was me, then you'll know what side you were really on. Morales stopped pacing. You think courage fixes everything? No, Elijah said. It just stops it from rotting completely. Morales's breath hitched, caught between guilt and admiration. You're not like the others. I'm just tired of being afraid. The room felt smaller, claustrophobic, the truth pressing in on both men. Morales finally said, They'll come for me if this keeps going. Elijah nodded. And they'll come for me regardless. A faint vibration interrupted them. Ava's call. Elijah answered. Talk to me. Her tone was clipped, urgent. They're dragging your name through every outlet. Someone leaked part of your military record. PTSD, deployment reports. They're twisting it. Elijah's hand tightened around the phone. Who leaked it? Doesn't matter. The point is, they're trying to make you unstable in the public eye. We need to respond fast, he exhaled, slow and deep. No statements. Not yet. Elijah, I said no. She hesitated. You're losing public ground. Then let them see silence as strength. He hung up. Morales watched him. They'll crucify you for that. Elijah sat back, exhausted but resolute. They already did. I'm just choosing not to die on their schedule. Outside, thunder rolled across the skyline. Morales stared out the window. The city lights blurred in the rain, each one a reminder of everything he hadn't said, hadn't done. Finally, he turned. If they question me again, I'll tell them the truth. Elijah nodded once. Good. Don't do it for me. Do it because someday your kid will ask what kind of man you were. Morales swallowed hard. You really think it'll change anything? Elijah's voice was quiet. Maybe not the world, but it'll change you. The officer nodded, eyes glassy, then left without another word. Elijah stood alone, watching the rain trace thin paths down the glass. For the first time since the arrest, he felt the weight shift, not lighter, just balanced differently. He wasn't fighting to win anymore. He was fighting not to break. The morning the footage dropped, the city was already awake, restless, wired, tense. A gray dawn spread across the skyline like bruised skin. At 6:14 a.m., a link appeared on a small local blog. By 6:30, it was on Reddit. By 7, national feeds were dissecting it frame by frame, the dash cam recording. Unedited. Cole's voice rang through every living room, every phone screen. Weak little man. Thought that uniform made you special? The world watched Elijah's silence, his refusal to react, the control in his jaw, the stillness that only men who've seen war can hold. By noon, hashtags surged, Didarn weak hero. Then, still standing, Ava called first. It's everywhere. You're trending on CNN, the BBC, everywhere. They can't spin this anymore. Elijah sat by the window, watching light crawl over the cracked pavement below. Good, she said. This could end him. It won't end him, Elijah said flatly. But it'll expose him. At the precinct, chaos had erupted. Phones rang nonstop. Cameras lined the entrance. Officers slipped through side doors, ducking lenses. Cole stormed through the hallway, face flushed, tie askew. He slammed open Captain Reeves's office door. This is a setup, he snapped. That footage was confidential. Reeves, a man who'd spent decades balancing politics and silence, didn't look up from his desk. Confidential doesn't mean exempt from consequence. You're not hanging me for this. Cole barked. Reeves stood, finally meeting his eyes. You hung yourself when you forgot people were watching. For a long moment, the two men stared at each other. Authority meeting arrogance. Then Reeves said coldly, Turn in your badge. Cole froze. You're not serious. Reeves's tone didn't waver. Internal affairs will handle the rest. Cole's voice cracked. You're caving to public pressure. I'm doing what I should have done the day you crossed the line. The silence that followed was louder than shouting. Cole's hand shook as he pulled the badge from his chest, setting it on the desk like something dead. That afternoon, Ava met Elijah at a quiet park on the city's south side, neutral ground. Reporters had flooded his building. This was safer. She carried her laptop and a tired smile. It's done, she said. Cole's been suspended. IA's investigating. The mayor's calling it a moment for reform. Elijah looked at her, unreadable. Reform isn't justice, Ava sighed. Maybe not, but it's something. He stared across the field, children playing, laughter drifting in the distance, a world that hadn't seen what he'd seen. I didn't want this, he said quietly. I just wanted to breathe without explaining why. I know. A gust of wind rustled the trees, scattering dry leaves across the bench. She hesitated, then asked, What are you going to do now? He didn't answer right away. There's a hearing next week, right? IA wants your testimony, yes. They might need you to identify the voice on the tape. He gave a bitter smile, as if anyone doubts who it was. Ava looked down. They'll offer a settlement, Elijah. The city wants this gone. I'm not interested in quiet money, I figured. They sat in silence for a long time. The air felt almost peaceful, until Ava's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, froze. It's Cole, she said softly. He's giving a statement. Right now. The television feed cut to Cole standing outside his attorney's office, reporters shouting questions. His face was pale, voice strained. I made mistakes. Things I said, they don't reflect who I am. But I've served this city for 20 years. I've put my life on the line. I'm not a racist. I'm a human being who lost his temper. The crowd buzzed with flashes, microphones shoved forward. Sergeant Cole, what about the video? Taken out of context. Elijah watched from the park bench, jaw tightening. Ava muttered, he's still deflecting. Cole continued, this witch hunt is political. They're destroying careers over a single moment. A reporter called out, do you have anything to say to Sergeant Elijah Brooks? Cole hesitated. His voice softened. He's a veteran. I respect his service, but this has gone too far. Ava's hand balled into a fist. He's trying to reclaim sympathy. Elijah stood, the wind tugging at his jacket. Let him. The truth doesn't beg. That night, the video's impact deepened. Networks aired Elijah's military record, his commendations, interviews with former squad mates. One man, speaking from a hospital bed, said, he carried me out of fire, literally, and some guy calls him weak? The narrative flipped, from scandal to reckoning. Commentators dissected systemic bias, the fragility of authority, the hidden rot inside law enforcement. But for Elijah, none of it felt like victory. He stood on his balcony, the city stretching beneath him, glowing, restless, pretending it had learned something. His phone buzzed again. Unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. Cole's voice came through. Low trembling. You think you won, soldier? Elijah didn't reply. They'll forget you. They always do. And when they do, I'll still be here. You'll go back to nothing. A pause. Elijah's tone was calm. Then that's your punishment. You'll still be here. The line went dead. He stood there a long time, the night pressing close, until he whispered to no one. I didn't win. I survived. And the city kept humming, unaware it was changing, one exposed lie at a time. The municipal building smelled of old wood and nerves, floor polish, coffee, sweat, and fear pretending to be composure. The press gathered outside like a living organism, lenses glittering under gray light. Elijah stepped through the security scanner. His suit was plain, his eyes steady. He'd been in rooms like this before, ones where power pretended to listen. Inside, the internal affairs panel sat at a long table, 2 officers, 1 civilian, 1 lawyer. They didn't look like villains. They looked like fatigue in human form. Across the room sat Cole, no uniform. Just a gray suit and clenched jaw. His face had aged a decade in a week. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something smaller, not regret, just self-preservation. The lead investigator, Lieutenant Harris, adjusted her glasses. We're here to review the conduct of Sergeant Nathan Cole during the detainment of Sergeant Elijah Brooks. Both parties have been sworn in. Let's begin. A microphone clicked. Harris's voice was even. Mr. Brooks, in your own words, and what happened that day. Elijah's throat felt tight, but his voice was clear. I was leaving a cafe. Officer Cole approached, asked for ID. I asked why. He said I looked nervous. I told him I was just trying to get home. Then he said, Elijah paused, glancing toward Cole. He called me weak. The room held still. Harris nodded. And your reaction? I didn't react. I've learned silence keeps you alive. Someone scribbled notes. Someone else coughed. The air thickened. Cole leaned toward his mic. With respect, that's out of context. Officer Cole, Harris interrupted. You'll have your turn. Cole sat back, lips pressed tight. Harris gestured to the screen behind her. Exhibit A, dashcam footage, timestamped June 12, 1743 hours. The video played. The room filled with static, the faint hum of traffic, the flash of blue lights. Cole's voice echoed again, projected for all. Weak little man. Thought that uniform made you special? A few people in the back shifted uncomfortably. Harris stopped the clip. Mr. Brooks, after this exchange you were detained? Yes. For what reason? No reason given. Were you resisting arrest? No, Cole's attorney interjected. There's missing footage. Harris cut him off. We've reviewed the full file. Nothing justifies verbal abuse or unlawful detainment. Cole's composure cracked. You're making me a scapegoat. You know how many times I've had to... Harris's tone went cold. Sergeant Cole, sit down. He didn't. You want to talk about racism? Fine. But you don't know what it's like out there. Every stop could kill you. Every second's a threat. Elijah watched him unravel. Then maybe you shouldn't hold the power to stop anyone. Cole's glare shot like a blade. You think you're better because you wore a different uniform? Elijah didn't flinch. No, I think I learned what strength actually looks like. The room fell silent again. Harris finally said, "We've heard enough." They recessed for 40 minutes. Outside, rain began to fall. The crowd buzzed, protest signs mixing with cameras, chants echoing faintly through the windows. Ava found Elijah in the hallway. "You did what you had to." He leaned against the wall. "He doesn't get it. He never will. That's not your job anymore," she said. "You showed them." "That's enough," he shook his head. "It's never enough. They'll move on. New scandal, new story." She studied him. "Then don't let them. Use this." Before he could respond, a clerk opened the door. "They're ready." Back in the room, everyone stood. Harris cleared her throat, voice steady as marble. "After reviewing the evidence, testimony, and video, this panel finds that Sergeant Nathan Cole engaged in conduct unbecoming of a police officer, including verbal abuse, unlawful detainment, and falsification of the incident report. Effective immediately, he is terminated from the department. Further, his actions will be referred for federal civil rights review." Gasps rippled through the audience. Cameras clicked. Cole's face went white. His attorney whispered something, but he didn't hear. He just stared ahead, eyes hollow, hands trembling. Elijah felt no triumph, no release. Just exhaustion. Harris turned toward him. "Sergeant Brooks, we recognize your patience and dignity in the face of mistreatment. The city extends." He cut her off quietly. "Don't, just fix what let it happen." For a moment, she didn't know how to respond. Then she nodded. "We'll try." He left the room before anyone could stop him. Outside, rain soaked the steps. Reporters shouted questions. "How do you feel? What's next?" But Elijah kept walking. The rain plastered his shirt to his skin, washing away nothing but noise. Ava caught up beside him, umbrella useless. "You could have given a statement." "I said everything that mattered." They stopped under an awning, breath misting in the cold air. "Do you feel vindicated?" she asked. Elijah looked out at the crowd, the signs, the cameras, the chaos. "No, just visible." She nodded slowly. "Visibility is the start. Not if they blink too soon." The streetlights flickered on, golden reflections spreading across the wet pavement. The world seemed both heavier and more awake. Elijah turned to Ava. "You ever wonder if justice is just a mirror? It shows you what's wrong, but it doesn't fix the cracks." Ava's voice was soft. "Maybe fixing comes later." He looked up at the sky, gray breaking into the first streaks of light. "Then I'll wait." For the first time in months, he let himself breathe. Not freely, but fully. The storm hadn't ended. It had just shifted direction, and somewhere behind him a door closed on a man who finally had to face what he'd built his power on. A week passed. The world had already begun to move on. Cable networks pivoted to new crises. Headlines shrank, hashtags faded, attention fractured. The story that once burned like a flare was now a dim ember buried beneath political chatter and celebrity gossip. But in certain corners, classrooms, community halls, small podcasts, late-night barbershops, people still whispered about the veteran and the cop. The story lived there, stripped of polish. Elijah stayed quiet. His apartment was cleaner now. No more unopened mail, no reporters at the door. Just quiet. The quiet was both a gift and a wound. He cooked breakfast one morning, and eggs, toast, black coffee, and noticed his hands no longer trembled when he poured. He could almost convince himself things were normal. But when the news ran a small segment about ongoing departmental reforms, something inside him clenched. The anchor's tone was smooth, sterile. A single case now closed. It wasn't closed. Not for him. Ava stopped by that afternoon, laptop tucked under her arm as usual. "You disappeared," she said. "I'm here," he replied, not looking up from his plate. "I mean from the story. No statements, no interviews. You could be shaping what happens next." He sipped his coffee. "I'm tired of shaping things. Let someone else hold the hammer," she sighed. "You know what happens when you go quiet, right? They rewrite the ending without you." He glanced at her. "They already did. I'm the headline that taught them nothing." Ava's voice softened. "You taught people more than you think." He shook his head. "Maybe, But what changes when the next man gets stopped? When the next cameras turned off before the insult, she didn't answer. She just sat across from him, the weight of his truth filling the room. Later, she opened her laptop and turned it toward him. A new article filled the screen. Former officer under federal investigation for civil rights violations. Elijah read the lines slowly. Words like perjury, pattern of misconduct, abuse of authority. He leaned back quiet. So it's not over. Ava nodded. Not for him. He stared at the ceiling. Justice is slow, but it's moving. She smiled faintly. That's new coming from you. Don't get used to it. 2 days later, Elijah received a letter. Hand-delivered, no return address. The handwriting was tight, almost angry. Sergeant Brooks, you don't know me, but I was in your unit. Afghanistan 2010, I watched the footage. It made me remember things, and things we buried to stay sane. You didn't let them bury you. I wanted to say, you still lead us, even if the field's different now. Elijah folded the letter slowly, fingers brushing the edge of the paper as if it were something fragile. He set it on his desk beside a framed photo. 4 men in desert gear, dust on their faces, the same kind of silence in their eyes. He whispered, "We're still here." Outside, the city had shifted. A mural now covered a brick wall downtown, a black soldier standing tall, shadowed by police lights behind him. At the bottom, a line in white paint. Strength doesn't need permission. People took photos in front of it. Some knew the story. Most didn't. That didn't matter. Symbols had their own half-life. A week later, Elijah visited his mother's grave, the one place untouched by cameras. The cemetery was quiet, wind sweeping dry leaves across the stones. He knelt, brushing dirt from the engraved name. "Hey, Ma." His voice was steady. "It's over. At least the part everyone saw." He paused. "I wish you could have seen it. Not the hate and the standing after. You always said survival's the loudest kind of defiance." He smiled faintly. "You were right." A silence stretched, the kind that doesn't need filling. On the drive home, the radio host's voice drifted through static. "Today marks the first public hearing for the new Citizens Oversight Board, created in response to the Elijah Brooks case." He turned the volume up. The host continued, "A small step, officials say, toward rebuilding trust." For the first time, Elijah didn't scoff. He just listened. That night, he stood on his balcony again. The city lights shimmered, rain falling in soft sheets. Across the street, a child laughed, high, unbroken, alive. He let the sound settle into him. Ava had once said visibility was the start. Maybe she was right. Maybe survival was step 1, truth step 2, and silence. This kind of silence. Step 3, recovery. His phone buzzed. A message from Morales Daye wrapped up my case. Suspended 2 weeks. "Worth it," Elijah typed back. "Good. You did what mattered." The reply came a moment later. "Still scared." But less than before, Elijah smiled, not wide, not proud, just enough to breathe. He looked out over the city, whispering under his breath, "One day maybe this place will deserve its heroes." The rain eased. The lights stayed on, and for the first time since that night, Elijah closed his eyes, not to shut out the world, but to rest within it. 6 months later, the city had changed its rhythm, not quieter, not gentler, just more aware. The old precinct was now fronted by a glass sign that read, Citizens Oversight Board Office, its letters gleaming under streetlight. A small irony, the building once guarded against truth now housed it. Elijah passed it every week on his way to the community center. He never stopped, never stared, but he always noticed the flag above it. Same height, same angle, but somehow less blind. Inside the center, kids laughed over a table full of chessboards. Veterans sat near the back, trading jokes over black coffee and cheap pastries. The smell of burnt toast mixed with hope, the kind that didn't demand headlines. Ava walked in carrying 2 folders and her usual exhaustion. "You missed the morning session," she said. "I was teaching Malik how to trap a queen," Elijah said, nodding toward the smallest kid who grinned through missing teeth. Ava set the folders down. "You've got a letter." He raised an eyebrow. "From who?" She hesitated, then handed it to him. The envelope was official, Department of Justice. Elijah tore it open. "Mr. Brooks, Following completion of the federal investigation into former Sergeant Nathan Cole, we wish to inform you that charges of civil rights violations and falsification of records have been upheld. The sentencing hearing will take place next month. You may attend if you wish. He read it twice, quietly. Then he folded the paper, slipped it back into the envelope, and said, "Justice moves like winter, but at least it moves." Ava studied his expression. "You'll go?" He nodded. Not to watch him fall. To make sure he doesn't get up pretending to be changed. The courtroom was smaller than he expected. No grand speeches, no cameras this time. Cole sat at the defense table in a plain gray suit, wrists cuffed, shoulders slumped. His lawyer whispered something, but Cole didn't respond. When the judge entered, the room rose. The gavel's crack cut through the murmurs like final punctuation. The prosecutor summarized the charges: unlawful detainment, falsified reports, patterns of discrimination substantiated by multiple testimonies. Each word was precise, sharp, clinical. Cole's defense tried to humanize him: stress, PTSD, one bad day. Elijah watched in silence, his hands folded. He'd heard that line too many times before from too many people who mistook apology for accountability. Finally, the judge spoke. "Sergeant Nathan Cole, this court finds you guilty of civil rights violations under federal statute. You are hereby sentenced to 8 years in federal custody, with eligibility for parole in 4. The sound that followed wasn't applause or relief, just breathing. Cole didn't look up. He just said quietly, "I was doing my job." Elijah's voice, low but clear, answered from the gallery. "Your job was to protect, not to conquer." The bailiff placed a hand on Cole's arm. He didn't resist. As they led him out, Cole turned once, eyes meeting Elijah's. For a moment, the mask cracked. Fear, regret, confusion, a man forced to face what he built. Elijah didn't smile. He didn't nod. He simply stood bearing witness. Afterward, Ava met him on the courthouse steps. The sky was open and cold, a blue that looked rinsed clean. "So that's it?" she asked. He shook his head. "That's the legal part. Justice isn't the same as closure." "Then what is it?" He looked out over the street. Cars passing, people hurrying, a world still carrying weight but lighter somehow. "Justice is when someone finally listens and doesn't look away." Ava smiled faintly. "Then maybe today counts." He didn't answer. He didn't have to. 2 weeks later, the city council invited him to speak at the unveiling of the new training center, named after no one, but dedicated to rebuilding trust. He stood at the podium before a small crowd. Officers, activists, civilians, families. No cameras this time. Just faces. He cleared his throat. "I've been asked what justice looks like," he began. "It's not handcuffs or courtrooms. It's responsibility. It's what happens when people stop saying not all and start saying not anymore." He paused, eyes scanning the crowd. "I'm not here as a victim or a symbol. I'm just a man who refused to stay silent when silence was easy. That's all any of us can do, refuse silence." Applause followed, not loud, not staged, but steady. After the ceremony, he walked alone through the courtyard. The mural was there too. "Strength doesn't need permission." Someone had added a new line beneath it. "Truth doesn't need permission either." He stopped, looking at the fresh paint still drying in the sun. The city felt different now, not healed, but aware of its scars. That night, Elijah sat by his window again, the skyline alive with low thunder and neon glow. He opened his notebook, the same one he'd carried since the war, and wrote a single line: "Justice isn't the end of pain." It's proof the pain meant something. He closed the book, exhaled, and leaned back. Outside, the rain started again. Slow, rhythmic, steady, the kind that washed, not erased. And as the city breathed beneath him, Elijah finally allowed himself a small private peace, not because he'd won, but because the truth had outlived the lie.